Before we can really get into retopology, we have to look into a relatively new concept called autoretopology. This is something people use a lot these days. In the old days, back in the Wild Wild West, you had to do retopology by hand. You had to place every single polygon. And that's still a preferred method for a lot of things. That said, we do have autoretopology these days, which in ZBrush comes in form of zero measure, which you can find under Tool, Geometry, Zero Measure, and Zero Measure here. But like we discussed in the former video, I just put it here in interface because I use this quite a bit. So let's talk quickly about what this is useful for and what it's not useful for. This is good for things which is not going to deform too much. For instance, in this character here, the hair is most likely not going to deform a whole lot. Same with the cloth here. But there might be a lot of deformation in the face if you were to like squash and stretch his face or just like do any kind of facial expression. So for the face, I want to have absolute control over everything. And to get that, I need to do it by hand. When people try to do the face with autoretopology, you end up having to spend most of your time just fixing it. So I would highly recommend doing something like the face or anything organic. Like if I were to do, or anything moving, deforming. Like if I were to do a full-on human, I would never use autoretopology on that because I need absolute control over how it's going to articulate and deform. So let's just check out what it's going to look like. We're just going to duplicate the tool, or let's just clone this. Now we have head here. And let's just reduce the subdivision level. We just Shift D, and we don't need the top level. So I'm just going to go down to Tool, Geometry, and just delete higher. And now we're just going to hit Zero Measure once, default settings, and let's just see what happens. So this took about 40 seconds. And if we go into wireframe mode by hitting Shift F, we can now see the topology here. And by first look, it looks pretty good. It looks pretty damn decent. That said, if you start to look closer here, you can see we get some nasty, nasty stuff around deforming regions here. For instance, the eye here is not going to deform well. We need pretty much circles or loops going around the eye, going around the nose, the nasolabial fold, the lips, and everything. So we can't use this at all. The lowest level of subdivision needs to reflect the mesh. It needs to have all the deforming regions in it, which this doesn't. That said though, you might be able to use some of this. For instance, this region here is probably perfectly fine. Probably everything is probably fine except for this region here and including the ear. The rest is probably going to be fine, but I would still do it from scratch because you end up with such a mess if you try to connect these two regions. It might be fine, but I like to control it from scratch. That said, we will use it for the hair. Let's just check out the hair. So I'm just going to look at the hair and just clone. And this is going to be fine because the hair we don't really care about when it comes to topology, because you don't need specific control over how the hair is gonna deform. So this took about 46 seconds, which is pretty much the same as the last one. If you look at this, this retains most of the form of the old one. If we just undo this, go between these two versions, this is fine. As we don't care about deformation, this is an awesome base. If I were to do this by hand, this would take a lot of time because this has so many curves and so much going on here. So this here would be really time consuming to do by hand. If I were to do this by hand, I will most likely just create some kind of generic smooth mesh and just displace the rest of it, to be honest, because this would take a lot of time. So autoretopology is amazing for certain things like hair, or even for stuff like the cloth here. I'll probably use autoretopology for the cloth here as well. At least if this was a piece I would spend more time on. But this is obviously just for training purposes. So that's pretty much it for autoretopology. We access it by going to Geometry and just Zero Measure. Or at least that's for discussion. I'm just going to go too much into how to use this. It's very self-explanatory, We have zero measure, which will just zero mesh it. We'll just retopologize it. Then we have target poly count. The target poly count is, it's a bit of a weird one. By default, it's set to 5, which should be 5,000. It doesn't really seem to give us 5,000. I'm a bit unsure what's actually going on here, to be honest. But it essentially means lower number, lower quality, or lower polygon count, higher number, higher polygon count. We can use curves and everything as well to get a better result. But at the end of the day, I pretty much only use default settings by hitting, changing the polygon or the target poly count here, and then just setting zero measure. And that's pretty much it for autoRetopology.